Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and do a comparison between the M1 iPad Air, the iPad Air 5 that just came out, and the Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 and see which specific tablet you should go and pick up. Now I would say these two are kind of in the same price range. These two are probably the main competitors of one another, considering that the iPad Air 5 is kind of a mid-tier iPad. It's a great iPad I think, but you do have the iPad Pro's 11-inch and the 12.9-inch iPad you could pick up. Kind of the same thing with the Tab S8. You have the S8, S8 Plus, and the S8 Ultra, so kind of the same type of layout. If you want to pick up either one of these tablets up, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, side by side, there are a lot of similarities between both of these tablets, and it's actually very interesting because on one hand, with the Tab S8, I would say the panel isn't as great in some ways as the iPad Air, but in other ways, the iPad Air's panel isn't as great as the Tab S8. It's very, very interesting. So the Tab S8 has a 11-inch TFT panel on the front. The resolution is 1600 by 2560, and it is a 120 Hz panel. Now the panel itself, when I look at it, I'm surprised Samsung still doesn't put an AMOLED display or OLED display on these Tab S8s, the base models. I understand they put them on some other tablets, but the Tab S8 with this one, I think they could do it, and I think that would make this tablet look so much better than its direct competitors. The panel itself is fine. You don't really have that much bezel around it, pretty much the same as the iPad Air 5, but it is a good feeling tablet, and the panel itself is great. I like the 120 Hz panel. I just don't think it's, as great to look at, if you're not touching either one of these, as the iPad Air 5. I like the iPad Air 5's 10.9-inch panel in some ways too. Now it does like 120 Hz, so that's a really big thing to keep in mind, but you still get that pretty big resolution on it, which is really nice, almost the same as the Tab S8, and it is a little bit of a smaller screen, technically speaking, but it's really not that big of a deal, and it is an IPS panel. I've always preferred IPS over TFTs. OLEDs are like number one, so both these panels aren't at that caliber, but you still have things like True Tone and that type of warming on the display too, which is really, really nice. Now they both have USB Type-C ports on the bottom, which is great. Both have headphone jacks as well, but the Tab S8 does have a micro SD card slot, so this can be a really big deal for some people. If you want to go ahead and expand the storage on your tablet, well, you have a lot more of an easier option on something like a Galaxy Tab S8 over the iPad Air 5. It's definitely not a crazy mind-boggling thing, but it is one of those things that I look at, and it will probably give you a better experience on a Tab S8 than on an iPad Air 5. Now on the back, and on the sides, we do have a flat back and flat sides all across both these tablets, which is really cool. And like I mentioned, when you feel both in the hand, they kind of feel like the same thing. Like one doesn't really feel way more different than the other one, but you do get kind of a different setup on the back. So with the iPad Air 5, you do have support for the Apple Pencil, which is cool. It plugs into the side and you can pretty much charge it from there. The Tab S8 actually has a stylus on the back you can go ahead and plug it in on, and it kind of is cool because you can kind of have it slanted, and I mean there's like I wish it was just built into both these tablets, but the Tab S8 does come with a stylus built into the box, so you can actually just utilize that stylus right there instead of having to buy it separately. With the iPad Air 5, you do have to buy the Apple Pencil separately, which can be kind of an annoying thing for some people out there. And we also have the camera setups on the back of both of these tablets as well, which we'll go ahead and hit on right now. The Tab S8 has that 13 megapixel wide-angle lens, and it has a 6 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, and also has a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor on the front. The iPad Air 5 has that 12 megapixel wide-angle lens on the back and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor on the front. Now this is what's very interesting. With the Tab S8, you have 4K at 60 you can film on the front and the back of that tablet. On the iPad Air 5, you can do 4K at 60 on the back, but you can only do 1080p at 60 on the front, which I still think is perfectly fine. So in terms of the core features beyond them, they kind of have the same thing going on, but I would say the Tab S8 has more availability and just more option for you to utilize those features. The Tab S8, you can do 4K at 60 on the front and the back, which is nice. You have the additional ultra-wide sensor on the back as well. Now I wouldn't say either one of these cameras are beating their iPhones or phones of this year. Like the Tab S8's camera is not better than a Galaxy S22, and the iPad Air camera is not better than an iPhone 13. But I will tell you that when it comes down to both these cameras, they are very good cameras to be on tablets. I think with that iPad Air 5, having that ultra-wide sensor on the front really makes a lot of sense, especially if you're doing a lot of FaceTime calls and everything. With a lot of those, apps that are built in, and for a lot of apps that you would normally use things for cameras, for me personally, like Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok and those type of apps, whichever ones are suitable and, supported on these tablets, well, you may be getting a better experience on an iPad just because the developers are able to utilize, I guess, that stock raw camera. Whereas on the, tablet side on Androids, especially with Samsung's, it seems like the camera quality isn't as great. It's totally okay, but it is one of those things that I found as well. So when it comes down to both these cameras, I will probably say the Tab S8 may be a little bit better and overall just the camera, experience. But I will say the quality of the iPad Air 5 camera is still really good, and I would probably prefer something like an iPad Air 5 camera because I am engrossed in the Apple ecosystem. So that is one thing to keep in mind for sure. Now in terms of software, this is another crazy thing. Samsung has pretty much promised 5 years of security updates for the Tab S8 and 4 years of full OS updates, which is amazing. With the iPad Air 5, I'm going to assume it's probably going to end off around the same time as the Tab S8. Because the M1 chipset inside of the iPad Air has been out for already like 2 years now, I'm assuming that the M1 chipset is going to last probably 7 years in total. So because of that, something like the Galaxy Tab S8, it's not going to be unsupported tomorrow. The iPad Air 5 is not going to be unsupported tomorrow either. Most people are probably going to buy this iPad or tablet maybe this year, next year, the year after, and most people will probably upgrade their tablets before this thing even gets done getting support. So again, that is a big thing to keep in mind. When you're getting a tablet like the iPad Air 5 or the Tab S8, these things are lasting for many, many years to come. So I wouldn't really worry about the software experience between both, in terms of longevity. If you like iPad OS or if you like Android, you're going to have to figure out which one you like and go down that direction. But I do think the iPad Air 5 is going to last a long time, and the Tab S8 is going to last a long time as well. In terms of performance, the Tab S8 has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset with 8 gigs of RAM on the base model, and it does go up to 12 gigs of RAM. With the iPad Air 5 has that M1 chipset inside of it with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And the performance segment between these is probably the most boring segment, to be honest. There's probably no difference between these two. I've used the Tab S8 for a long time, or at least for like a month now. I've used the iPad Air 5 for about a week and a half now. And again, there's really no differences between them. They kind of have their strong suits between both. I'll say loading into games and app opening speeds and all that stuff, maybe the iPad Air 5 is a little bit smoother and faster. And I do get like a smoother experience going through the whole entire UI and everything on the iPad Air 5. But the Tab S8 has so much power built in within it. And if you get that 12 gig of RAM option, you're getting more RAM on that thing as well. But I love the ability of just installing any application that I want to for the most part. And I can run a ton of emulators on my Tab S8, and I have a lot more capability of, something like a Tab S8 in some cases than an M1 iPad Air. So because of that, yes, the iPad Air is a fast iPad. You are getting very similar performance between these two. So because of that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going from a Tab S8 to an iPad, Air 5 because of the performance. These are way more similar than not in this, type of situation. So because of that, yes, you're getting very good capability between both, but I wouldn't go from an iPad Air 5 to a Tab S8 or from a Tab S8 to an iPad Air 5 just because of the performance alone. There may be some other areas here and there, but I'll definitely tell you the performance is very, very good on both. And no matter what you're going to do with them, you're probably going to be getting a really solid experience from both for sure. Now, in terms of battery life, I did find that both of them had a really good battery life as well for the most part. I didn't really find one being way better than the other one, to be honest. I'm sure if I did a direct test, I will probably give you a good answer. But from my first, assumption between both, I couldn't really tell that big of a difference, to be honest. So in terms of that covers it up there as well. And to be completely honest, I do think that both these tablets are pretty much neck and neck. It really comes down to, are you more familiar with iPadOS or are you more familiar with One UI on the Android side? And personally, I would probably pick up an M1 iPad Air just because I'm more engrossed in the Apple ecosystem. But looking objectively, if I had to pick up one and I didn't know which one or the other, whatever, I would probably say that the Tab S8 has more features built in. You have that micro SD card slot, which is awesome. You have the 120 Hz. You have that stylus that's already, given to you basically. You have Samsung DeX, which is awesome. You're having that 4K 60 on the front and the back, and you have that ultra-wide sensor as well. Those are some really cool flagship features that you're going to be having on something like the base model of the Tab S8. But on the iPad Air, you are still getting a very solid machine as well. That thing is going to be supported for a long period of time. You have the whole entire Apple ecosystem. You have great camera quality, still great performance, smooth performing tablet, and there's really not that much to hate on that iPad either. But that's kind of how I would say it, to be honest. If you have any questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.